Thanks to DNA technology, more and more does are being identified all the time, and now we can add another name to that list. Let's talk about the girl only known as Beth Doe before she was finally identified in 2021. Whitehaven, Pennsylvania resident Kenneth Jumper was just 14 years old on December 20th, 1976. As he walked along the bank of the Lehigh River near the borders of Carbon and Luzerne counties, he found something he almost certainly didn't expect or want to see: a human head. When police arrived on the scene, they found even more. 3 suitcases had apparently been thrown from the nearby bridge, seemingly by someone who was aiming for the river below but missed. 2 of the suitcases broke open when they hit the ground, and the rest of the remains were on the bank, visible to anyone walking by. Another suitcase was found in the nearby woods. A subsequent investigation showed the remains belonged to a white female between the ages of 15 and 25. She was estimated to be between 4'11" and 5'4", 140 to 150 pounds, with brown hair and eyes. The woman, or girl, had a lot of tooth decay and dental problems that would have put her in a lot of pain. She had a scar on her left leg and a mole on her left cheek. There was also writing on her left hand. It wasn't clear just what it said, but it's believed to say WSR4, WSR5, or WSR7. The girl or woman, nicknamed Beth Doe, had been strangled, shot in the neck, and dismembered with precision. Her nose, ears, and breasts had been cut off. They've never been found. Then her body parts had been placed into 3 separate suitcases, which were spray painted black and had the zippers removed. Various body parts were wrapped in bedspread, others in newspapers dated from September of that year. She was thought to have been dead less than 24 hours, possibly because of the ink on her hand, which would have lasted 8 to 12 hours. But perhaps the saddest part of all this is that Beth Doe was pregnant. In fact, she was full term, maybe even just days away from giving birth to a baby girl. The bodies of Beth Doe and her unborn daughter were kept in evidence for a while. In 1983, they were buried in a pauper's grave in Whitehaven. Despite being at least somewhat mutilated, Beth Doe's face was still largely recognizable. There have been several facial reconstructions over the years. The latest one I could find was released in 2015 by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And along with these reconstructions came plenty of speculation. People wondered how a young woman about to give birth could disappear just days before Christmas and not be reported missing. Theories range from her being a runaway or an illegal immigrant to her baby's father being responsible for her death. At least one web sleuth user speculated that she was in a relationship but was unfaithful. Then her boyfriend or husband figured out the baby wasn't his and killed her in anger. Other users wondered if her pregnancy was a result of abuse by a family member and she was killed to cover that up. Others wondered what the writing on her hand could mean. Theories included directions, a message to let someone know she was in danger, or maybe just notes she took on her hand to remind her of something. For example, in my senior year of high school, I used to write my homework assignments on my hand because I didn't want to forget to do them, but was too lazy to buy a planner. In 2007, Beth Doe's body was exhumed for DNA testing. Investigators planned to run her DNA through databases, but at this point they didn't expect to find a match. This was a time before websites like 23andMe were popular. However, these 2007 tests did rule out a few missing persons as Beth Doe. Later isotope testing also determined she might have been born in Europe, maybe Serbia or Croatia. She might have come to the United States 5 or 10 years before her death, possibly living in the southeastern part of the country. In 2015, a new reconstruction was released of the suitcases Beth Doe's body had been placed in. This reconstruction showed what they would have looked like before being spray painted and having the zippers removed. Over the years, several missing women have been speculated as potential matches to Beth Doe, most of them on a lengthy web sleuth thread about the case, which I will link below. Nancy Monahan is a Pennsylvania resident who was inspired by the case to create PennsylvaniaMissing.com, which no longer appears to be active, at least as a missing person site. At one point, Monahan thought Beth Doe might be Janet Hanna, who disappeared in July of 1976. Janet was later found alive. In 2019, a woman called police and said Beth Doe might be a former classmate of hers. Maggie Cruz ran away from her Massachusetts foster home in 1974 when she was 16. She reportedly called a friend 2 years later and said she was pregnant, but nobody seemed to have heard from her after that. However, there was an investigation and she was found alive. In early 2020, part of Beth Doe's femur bone was used to create a new DNA profile. That's where investigators finally found a relative. Luis Colon Jr. knew he had an aunt who hadn't been heard from since the 1970s. Around 2016, he started submitting his DNA to various databases like 23andMe, hoping to find his long-lost aunt and maybe any cousins he'd never met. Instead, in March 2020, he got a call saying his DNA had matched with a homicide victim. Police got in contact with Luis Colon Jr., who told them about his aunt. Then they talked to his dad, Luis Colon Sr., who told them about his sister, Evelyn Colon. He described Evelyn's mole on her face and scar on her leg, which at least partially matched Beth Doe's description. He also told them about a man named Luis Sierra, who Evelyn had been dating when she was last heard from. When police first interviewed Sierra, he initially denied even knowing Evelyn. He eventually confessed that she had been his live-in girlfriend and the mother of his coming child years ago. As he claimed, she had been threatening to leave him for a while, so when he came home one day and she was gone, he figured she had done just that. He did say he went to her mom's house to see if she was there and doing okay, but nobody answered. But investigators didn't buy it. On March 31st, 2021, nearly 45 years after Beth Doe's body had been found, Pennsylvania State Police announced that she had officially been identified as Evelyn Colon. Evelyn Colon was born on April 17, 1961. Her family was from Puerto Rico, but in 1976, she lived with her family in Jersey City, New Jersey. The family lived next door to Luis Sierra at one point, which I believe is how they met. Once Evelyn found out she was pregnant at 15, she moved in with then 19-year-old Sierra in preparation to start their new family. According to Evelyn's sister, Migdalia Colon, Sierra was jealous and controlling, sometimes even locking Evelyn in their apartment. Evelyn reportedly told her mom at some point that if anything ever happened to her, Sierra was responsible. In mid-December of 1976, Evelyn's mom, brother, and/or sister, different sources said different things, went to visit and found her gone. Less than a month later, her family got a letter with no return address, but postmarked from Connecticut. The letter was seemingly from Evelyn, saying she'd moved to Connecticut with Sierra and their new baby boy, Luis Sierra Jr. She also said she'd contact them if she needed anything else. Thinking she'd cut them off voluntarily, her family didn't initially report her missing. They later tried, but police saw the letter and wouldn't file a missing persons report because they also assumed that she had left on her own. Luis Sierra later admitted to writing and sending the letter. An article posted on April 3rd, 2021 said Evelyn's family had no photos of her because they were all destroyed in a fire the year before she died. However, a few photos did surface in another article posted on April 14th, 2021. I assume they were obtained from sources outside the old family home that burned, maybe from extended family members or friends. Before any photos of Evelyn were made public, a few relatives said she didn't really look like the composite sketches, but her aunt, Miriam Colon Veltman, thought she resembled other family members. Colon Veltman also organized a GoFundMe for the family. The money will go to Evelyn's family members so that they can travel to pay their last respects, pay to have Evelyn reburied with her family, a new memorial, and anything else the Colon family will need to honor Evelyn and her baby, according to the page's description. Colon Veltman also wrote that they have named Evelyn's unborn daughter Emily Grace. The same day that Evelyn's ID was announced, it was also reported that Luis Sierra had been arrested and charged with criminal homicide. Sierra was 63 by this time, lived in Ozone Park, New York, and worked as a bus driver, and had a wife and 2 children. A few weeks after his arrest, he was extradited to Pennsylvania. Sierra was charged in accordance with the laws of 1976, and so far there have been no charges in the death of Evelyn's unborn child. Sierra might face further charges later. And that is the latest update in this case as of now. Despite a suspect being in custody, a tip line has been introduced by the Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers, who are asking anyone else with any more information to come forward. You can reach this tip line at 800-4PA-TIPS. Be sure to reference media release number 1956. So that is the case of Beth Doe, or Evelyn Colon. I never heard of this case until she was identified, but it was apparently pretty well known. I'm glad to see a case so many people cared about well on its way to hopefully finally being solved. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.